everybody who goes to everybody who finds something they love to do that's physical and challenging, like running or going to the gym.
Well, even mental and emotional.
I was going to say,
Right.
Whether they know it or not, that's a byproduct. People feel better is the point. When
Right.
people find something they love to do physically, they feel better and they think better and they think more clearly and they're a little more mellow and they're less reactionary. There's a positive spiral that really encapsulates some sort of whole flourishing or thriving. It's not just that your legs get stronger or your lungs get more capacity. Physical exercise seems to bleed in a positive way to all these other emotional states and even cognitive states.
It does to a certain extent, because when you feel stronger, you're going to feel less threatened.
Part of the happiness research that in our film, the way I translated that awareness about physical activity and its impact on our emotional and psychological well-being, we translated that we summarized it with the word play.
Right.
So whether you're playing tennis, playing with your kids, running, whatever it is, surfing, for me, my play is surfing. That's what I love to do. If you play in a way that's physically and aerobically taxing or challenging, you're more likely to be happy in the long term. But a lot of people are resistant to that because the doctors have said diet and exercise, right? Those are the two things you need to sort of optimize yourself. And most people go, ugh, I don't feel like exercising, and I don't really feel like dieting. It doesn't sound good. But I wanted to talk to you about the way that these things work, where they create a positive spiral.
We have this robustness and flexibility within. It's like part of that joy, I think, on a physiological level is when you tap into your inner energy, that we have boundless energy. We have boundless mental capacity compared to other animals, right? So like you say, it's that upward spiral, upward cascade effect rather than downward.
And that's exciting to me because I can feel in myself, I should have done this last week because it works so well. To experience that is something that's so, it's a great reminder. What life are you choosing to live every day? Are you going to choose the life that's safe and comfortable, where you mitigate any risks and you don't push yourself because any kind of pushing puts you at risk? Or are you going to go for it and feel fulfilled in that way?
So people want to do these curious, risky things, but they don't want to take a risk.
Right. Well, and that's sort of what I was getting at with you is like, I would love to encourage people to have the experience I had when I started running long distances in the mountains, which is I didn't like running. Right. Running was tedious.
Like I said this morning to your daughter, running sucks.
It just felt miserable. It's like you'd have to run for practice. I love playing sports and chasing a ball or trying to score a goal. I could run my butt off, but just running for the sake of it was miserable. Until a couple friends of mine got me into running in the mountains, and the key for me was run slow enough that you can talk. Yeah. And I thought, oh, well, that's easy. Then I'm not exhausted and I don't feel like my lungs are going to be coughed out.
Roko, you're going to have to come up with me this summer.
Well, it was so wonderful.
You're not going to be able to talk, though, because when we get to high altitude, nobody talks.
Right. Well, the reason I bring it up is it was a gateway for me. I did not like running until the moment I realized, oh, if I go slow enough to where it's not miserable, that's okay.
It's not just that, though. Here's the other thing, because I started running before 2000, because my 40th birthday was approaching. I'm figuring, okay, this is the halfway point. How do I want to spend the other half?
Yeah.
And I'd always run here and there sporadically, but never. But in the 90s, I was working. I wasn't, focused on that, and so I started running to get healthy and ran my first marathon. That's where I accidentally came across this whole fat metabolism. A couple years after that, after I got started with the running, a group of us did a trail run, and I'd never done. I've been just running on the roads around Davis, and I went with a trail run with this group, and I'm like, well, this is kind of sort of like how I grew up hunting.
Yeah.
Just spending your days on the trail.
Right, and looking around, you can see things.
And so
dynamic.
what you're talking about with the physiology, though, we're getting back into that natural environment that we're meant to be in, and I think there is some subconscious messaging, signaling that puts us in a very different space than the urban, suburban.
That's right. So it's not just going slow. It's also that you get to be out in a place. Right. And there's something about it, one time, there's something about earning it. So you get the view from the top of the mountain. If you've run up that damn mountain, it's so much more rewarding than if you've driven up the mountain.
That's right.
It's still a beautiful view if you've driven, but if you're sweaty when you get up there, and that gives you a chance to take a little water break, and you look at your view, you're like, wow, there's something that's so whole about the experience and so wonderful. Yeah. And the problem is, there's a disconnect between hearing those words from me or from you and doing it, right? What does it
Right.
take to get somebody to actually do it? Like, I didn't believe my friends, and they tried for a few months to convince me to run, and it was only when I did it that I believed them.
Yes.
In other words, the words didn't work. I needed to find, bridging that gap was just the fact that I gave them the benefit of the doubt one day. And then, like I said, I started running slow, but within a few weeks I was running just as fast as they were and doing many, many, many miles, 10, 15, 20 miles in the mountains. And I never knew I could do that. And it was so much easier than I thought. It was so much less struggle. It was so much more rewarding.
Yeah, and once you're in that zone of what I call fat burning, you're just present and you're doing it.
You know what I'm recognizing is just sports, organized sports. My daughter is in swimming right now. My son and daughter both do karate. My daughter was also doing aerial silks for a while. Sports is a great proxy.
Yes.
Even though there's no lions running around or there's no sharks in the swimming around when you're swimming in a pool.
And the competition with teams. It's
Exactly.
Like, it's like the warring tribes.
There's a huge value
Right.
to it, and I see all kinds of character building. And I also love sports growing up, and I think that's at least something that we can aim towards that is relatively safe and super rewarding and fulfilling for the kids in a lot of the ways that we're talking about.
And you have to, there has to be like this. Okay, a lot of life is struggle and a lot of life is work, but when you get to a certain level of competency and accomplishment, that feels really good. When you take that away, like we've made things so convenient, it just like disappears.
My dad was living the American dream. Had a nice house, had a beautiful family, loving friends, and he just had everything you could want if you wrote down the American dream.
I mean, he had it twice. He had 2 boys and then he had 2 girls.
That's right. Why the hell would you get into a rowboat without a motor or a sail and try and cross the ocean? That level of hardship is illogical to most people. Why would you do that? Even when I surf out here, sometimes when the waves are big but it's stormy or it doesn't look beautiful or it's cold, people say, I'll wait till the weather's nicer. It's not logical why you would run 50 miles in the mountains. And that's sort of one of the challenges is culturally, we've been taught to aspire to a comfortable couch and a big TV and a remote so you don't have to get up, and get off the couch. And a car where you don't hear the road noise and that has, climate control and even the radio level adjusts with the outside noise. All of these things are interesting and wonderful inventions, but it's important, I think, to turn those off and get out in the mountains or in the ocean or do whatever it is.
It's funny because the old term "keeping up with the Joneses" has kind of come into play. Like what kind of car you drive.
Right. Well, I was just thinking as you were saying that. Sorry to interrupt, Peter, but if you do go out and run 50 miles, but you hang out with people who don't do that, all of your cultural noise will be telling you you're crazy, or it won't be encouraging you to do it more. But if you surround yourself by people who are doing similar things, who are striving to get out in the nature, who are wanting to push their bodies, then your version of keeping up with the Joneses could be positive, because then you say, my friend just ran a 50 miler. I wonder if I could ever do that. Let me try. There's a positive side to that social wanting to fit in if you're around a social group that's nurturing to your goals. People who are happy have better relationships. They are healthier. They're more productive at work. They're better teachers. They're better students. They live longer. Happiness is a win-win. Happiness is not about the person who's happy or not. It's about them and their community. Ed Diener, who's sort of the godfather of happiness research, said, well, if we could study depression and pathology, mental pathology, how come we can't study happiness? Isn't it just part of the same spectrum?
We can monetize depression.
Well, and what he realized is we can. And the point is he realized we can. So people started to study it.
But there's no money in it.
Well, I don't know about that part, but I know there's some value in it.
Exactly.
It helped me, for example, realize that playing is important.
Curiosity is important.
The story that I was told by my society, by culture, is that when you're a kid, you play. When you're an adult, you work. And I stopped surfing as an adult. I got out of college, I stopped surfing. I was pursuing my career as a filmmaker. And only once I realized how important play was that I started surfing again. And not only did I start surfing again, I moved to a place where I could surf regularly. I prioritized it, and I am definitely happier than I was before. I was already happy. I had no complaints. I felt grateful for what I had, but I realized, wow, even we're all in some place, like you said. It's a process. We all can get worse, and we all can get better in many ways. And in terms of happiness, we can improve it or we can diminish it.
But and it's also it's like a risk factor, right? What are the odds? So if you're happy, you're metabolically healthy, you're exercising, you have good relationships, the risk of contracting cancer, heart disease, depression, all the kinds of things, that risk factor, that 2%, I call it, goes way down. Whereas if you're chronic,
Yeah, if you're stressed, we know that chronic stress is not good for all kinds of stuff.
physiologically, yeah.
Right,
I mean,
right.
and it pings your glucose metabolism.
Yes,
right?
and that's good. So you understand the physiological and the biological aspects of it. My understanding of it is more from the psychology side, is from research, but also my own experience. Like if I surf in the morning and there's some decent waves, whether that surf session is a half an hour or 3 hours, I'm good for the rest of the day. Or even a half an hour of surfing or doing something where I'm physically sweating and exerting myself.
Challenging yourself.
It calibrates the rest of the day.
Yes.
And it's wonderful. And I don't know if that's because glucose not being pinged or if that's,
well, you get in
that
that zone, and yes, there's that physiology, but there's also the very reality that when you're surfing, I mean, you're catching a wave, you don't want to fall off.
Right.
Right? You want to ride that wave, and it's like
you're in the zone.
You're like up against nature. It's like this
Right.
this life or death fight in a wave, right? That keeps you sharp and alive.
Yeah.
Right?
And you cannot think of anything else in that moment. I have never developed a practice or a habit or however you want to think about it.
Right, but you're also getting in the zone.
I was going to say that surfing, one of the ideas of meditation is to clear your mind of any distractions, at least some of the principles. And when you're surfing, you cannot be worrying about anything, credit card bills, your next project, anything. You have to focus on that wave and exactly the balance of what's happening. And
you're completely present in the moment.
Right. There's a lot of benefits. And the point is, when I do that in the morning, the rest of my day is set. And that's such an easy thing to do. It's just not that hard. I mean, or you get on an exercise bike. They're sometimes really boring for me, but even that, a half an hour of that, just sweating. There's a lot that's within our control, and that's back to the happiness research. I didn't realize, I thought you were kind of born grumpy and miserable, or you were born, looking on the bright side. I just thought it was kind of who you are. I didn't realize how much of it we can control.
Having a sense of gratitude, curiosity, and happiness, it sets up a physiology that's going to get you back to that native thing, because you look at these people like the Tuvinians or some of these other people you had in Happy. They lead relatively simple lives, but they're happy, content. Yes, they have challenges. Yes, they have struggles. It's the human condition, but by and large, they don't have this chronic stress and discontent.
Yeah.
Because those pressures just aren't there.
Yeah.